Everybody, let's look at our vocab for chapter 3. And let's start off with our first word, which is stirrups. This will come up a lot in AP World History. Seriously, no, well, you're going to be surprised. So stirrups. Basically what stirrups are what allow you to ride a horse. They allow you to put your feet in, get better control of a horse as you're riding it with a saddle, and that allows you to be able to fight better, to be able to ride longer. And think about military at this time. If you're riding a horse, you are a much better fighter. This has to do with the environment because it allows people, once the horse has been domesticated, to become better fighters. It comes into Rome from Central Asia and is also an example of trade that's going on in connection with other cultures. Most people don't know this, but Rome and China were linked on the Silk Road trade. So they were trading back and forth all the time on these trade networks. So that is our next word also is siege devices. Siege devices are devices that allowed you to take over a walled city. So they would allow you to approach a walled city and take it over. This could mean catapults, trebuchets, any kind of towers that could be used to take over a walled city, which the Roman military was able to do and allowed them to expand and take over more land. We even see the crossbow here. Much of this technology, again, comes from Asia, and the Romans are able to access this technology, especially like the crossbow, and they are able to take over more and more land and take over cities, which used to not be able to take over if you would have a wall. Stoicism is a philosophy that comes out of Rome. And it's really kind of like taking advance of Greek ideas. And it's really believing in reason, that human beings should always be reasonable about what they do. They shouldn't be driven by their passions, by romance, and by those kind of things. They should be thinking about reason, have logic, reason things out, and then act upon it. And they should live, accept fate, that nature has certain rules you can live with. And if you choose not to live with it, life probably won't be very good. But that life will happen, fate will happen, and you have to be reasonable, logical, and just try to live with what is around you. Syncretism. Syncretism is basically a combination of different concepts into a new idea. So it's kind of like combining something, religions, culture, language, into something new. So take part of one culture, part of another culture, and mix it together. So we see syncretism in religion and philosophy. We saw that with the idea of Greco-Buddhism and Hellenism, where we saw Buddha wearing a toga. Romans definitely believe in syncretism. They will take the idea of many different gods, for example, and they will bring them together. You can see syncretism in religion. We can see that with the Virgin Mary of Guadalupe is a syncretistic idea of many native beliefs that existed in Mexico with Catholicism. So syncretism is basically just the idea of combining cultures or cultures mixing together. Here we see a McDonald's that is in what looks like to be China. It could be another Asian country. I don't quite know the letters that well. So syncretism, mixing of cultures together. And the Romans were very good at this because the Romans were able to get many different cultures around them, and they would let them believe in their gods, and they would say, we'll believe in our gods too, and we'll all mix our gods together. And that is syncretism. Martyrdom is to die for your beliefs. So martyrdom happens in Rome, especially with the Christians who are being persecuted at first in Rome, and many of them are willing to die. Some of them die in the Colosseum, some of them are tortured, but martyrdom is being willing to die for what you believe in, to basically spread on your belief or your philosophy. It exists in other religions as well. There are martyrs in Islam as well, martyrs in many other religions. Now what happens, ironically, in Christianity is that Rome eventually becomes a Christian nation. So you could make an argument that the work of these martyrs are literally dying to spread the belief of Christianity did work. So again, Christianity will come into Rome after many, many martyrs give up their lives to spread the teachings of Jesus. A republic. A republic is a form of government where people choose representatives, or they vote for representatives who will then speak for them. Now, this happened in Rome, that they had a Senate where there were representatives who were chosen. Now, the only people who could vote for them were men who could vote for the senators, and many of them had to be for the most part of the Roman Empire, it was the Patricians, or the upper class people, who could vote for these senators, just men. But it was voting, and it was a republic, because these people who were in the Roman Senate were supposed to represent the people of Rome. Now we'll get to the Senate. Senate in Rome was the body of representatives, or the people who were chosen by the Romans to lead them. Now, the Senate, again, was basically made up of patricians. Patricians were the upper class people in the society, and we'll get to that word in just a little bit. But the Senate was made of upper class patricians who were voted by men in Rome. Okay, our next word is the latifundia, and these were very large estates that were owned by Roman aristocrats, or the rich people in Rome. The rich lived on these estates where they would have thousands of slaves working on them, underneath them, as they would own the land and the slaves would work for them. This is basically showing how the aristocrats, the patricians, basically were getting more and more power in Rome, and it was starting to become more and more corrupt as they had more power, and they had more power over slaves who were underneath them, and also as the aristocrats started to own more and more land in Rome. Checks and balances is basically a system where nobody can have too much power, or other people can stop people. So they can check you or stop you, and you try to balance power. For example, in Rome, after a while, we had senators and tribunes, and we had patricians and plebeians. As you can see by looking at this chart, the majority of people in society were actually plebeians, the poor, and they were given some tribunes. The senators were majority patricians, and they had consuls who were on the top. The whole point in the system with checks and balances is that one person couldn't have too much power, that these people could be stopped because other people could speak their voice and could basically stop any one person from having too much power. And that is checks and balances. The Edict of Milan. The Edict of Milan basically allowed tolerance for Christianity and other religions by the Roman Emperor Constantine. And this allowed Christianity to become a legal religion, which eventually will become the main religion of Rome. It will be a bit syncretic. It will mix other parts from Rome in Christianity once Rome takes on Christianity. But the Edict of Milan makes Christianity a legal religion in Rome, which will lead to Rome taking on Christianity as its official religion. Pax Romana is seen as the Roman peace. This is after the death of Julius Caesar, when Caesar Augustus is in power, and he's emperor, and it is seen as the time period kind of Rome's peak, where the Roman Empire was at its strongest, and there was relative peace, and life was basically good in Rome. So it's called the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. And finally, patricians and plebeians. Patricians were more of the rich people who had more power in Rome, more of the aristocrats. Plebeians were more of the common people, and they were divided into different classes. Also, patricians had much more power. They had more representation in the Senate. Originally, the Senate was only patricians, but that changes after a while. And the plebeians gradually gained some more power over time. The laws of the 12 tables in Rome were pretty much that set the laws or law code for the Roman Empire. Now, they were actually demanded by the plebeians, or the lower class people, so they would know what the laws were when they were breaking the law, when they weren't breaking the law, and also they demanded more rights in these laws. The laws were posted all over the Roman Empire, and while they did give some more rights to the plebeians, it definitely wasn't equal. There were even laws at this time that forbid the marriage between patricians and plebeians at this time. Also, many of these laws were patriarchal and were definitely gave men more power than women. Just like Hammurabi's code of law, they were posted all over the Roman Empire so people could clearly see these laws and that the Roman Empire also was in charge.